and welcome back. If you're new here, a big welcome to you and thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm creating a single page 12 by 12 scrapbook layout featuring the Lily Pond Lane DSP from Stampin' Up. While this is actually a 6 by 6 paper collection, I'll show you how to use smaller sheets to create a beautiful 12 by 12 layout. Now, I know this paper features a lot of adorable ducks, and it can feel a bit busy at first glance. But here's a little trick. Flip it over to the B side. There you'll find these soft tone-on-tone patterns that are super versatile and easy to incorporate into any kind of layout. I can totally see this collection working for baby layouts, fishing trips, outdoor moments, and even swimming photos. So today I'm documenting 4 photos from a family trip to Mexico in 2018. Here we are feeding some koi fish. The first photo is my main image. The other 3 will serve as my supporting shots. I just love how perfectly the koi paper complements these photos. So before I started filming, I matted the smaller photos with this orange tone-on-tone paper here. This adds warmth and really makes the fish in the pictures pop. I'm really drawn to this gray pattern. It kind of looks like arrows or check marks. It's very subtle but adds lots of texture and complements the clothes my husband and my son are wearing in this photo. As much as I enjoy this collection, I felt like it needed a little textural element in a neutral color palette. If you look closely at the picture, you'll notice a white wicker table and chairs in the background. That's when I decided to incorporate the new online exclusives DSP called Woven Textures. This collection is perfect for adding texture and to any layout and patterns beautifully with most any color combination, making this a great complement to this page. I can see myself using this DSP in a lot of future layouts, whether it's on its own or like here, paired with other collections, especially bold patterns and bright color combinations. The collection comes in 2 colorways, warm browns and grays, each with different natural textures like linen or burlap, hence the name Woven Textures. As I'm flipping through these patterns, I found this one that's almost identical to the table and chairs in the background. Plus, this is one of the coordinating colors in the Lily Pond DSP, Gray Granite. While I could have used the other pattern or color, I felt like this complemented my pictures and the papers I'm using much better. I think I've got a good start to my layout. I'm going to clear all this away so we can get creating. Big surprise, I'm starting with white cardstock as the base of my layout. But this time I'm using Willow white cardstock. Since I'm working with a mix of colors, I thought a crisp white background would be a better choice. So here's the layout I'm envisioning for my photos. I'm thinking of running the 3 pictures of the fish in a column. Yep, I know, that's my go-to. These pictures are 2 3/4 by 3 1/4. And then my 4 by 5 1/4 focal photo will go here on the left. For this layout, my idea is to create lots of layers behind the focal photo. I'm envisioning a larger piece of the wicker-like paper kind of in the background, and then my focal photo with the layers sitting on top. So now I'm just flipping through the B-sides of the papers, pulling out patterns and colors that I think will work with my pictures. I can tell right away that I'm not going to use the pink, so I'm eliminating anything pink and placing them to the side. I really like these lily pads, and I think it'll bring in some nice color options. I'm keeping the tone-on-tone orange stripe because it brings in some warmth, and then this peacock pattern with this water-like design is so pretty. And this one's a keeper for sure, the gray arrow pattern I had been eyeing. I've also got this orange paper, which I use to mat my photos, and I'm definitely using the koi paper behind my koi pictures. For now, I've got 2 of these 6 by 6 sheets slightly overlapped, And the great thing about using a heavier patterned paper like this is it's much harder to see the seam. So as I mentioned, I'm planning to add lots of layers behind the main photo. I love this gray pattern paper. I think I've already said that a couple times. And I really like how my picture looks on it. Even though it blends a bit in the background right now, once I add the other layers of paper behind it, I think it'll look much more defined. I'm just going to play around with all the patterns and colors, mixing and matching until I'm happy with the result. One thing's for sure, I'm definitely going to need some orange in the mix. Okay, I'm happy with this so far, so let's figure out what size to trim the wicker paper down to. I'll grab a ruler here, and I'm thinking 7.5 by 11. And for the koi paper, let's go with 4 inches wide. I'll decide what length to cut them as I go. As for the gray arrow paper, I'll trim 1 inch off the bottom to make it 5 by 6. I'm really loving how this is coming together. I might trim down the wicker paper another inch off the bottom, but I'll let you know if I do. I'm also going to bring in a smaller 5.5 by 4.25 mat using Pretty Peacock cardstock to go behind the focal photo. I really like how it mirrors the color of the water the fish are in. Just look at how that photo pops with that. It just adds that balance to the layout by repeating the same colors throughout. Next, I'll bring in the other layers. I plan to ink the edges of all the DSP using gray granite ink. But before I do that, I want to trim down any papers I don't need to be full-sized. The stripe paper and the lily pads will stay as is, but as for the Pretty Peacock watery color, I'm going to trim that down to about 2 inches. And that's about the same as the orange paper I'm using. There's no need to use a full sheet when you're only going to see a small portion of it. I'm not going to make you watch me ink everything, but I do want to mention that I'm not adding ink to the 2 inside edges of the koi paper. I don't want to bring attention to that seam wherever it may end up. So I'm going to finish inking this all off camera. Everything is inked but not attached to the white cardstock just yet. So now let's move on to the embellishing. Off camera, I fussy cut out some of the koi fish from this paper. I don't remember seeing this design in my flip through. Oh wait, the B-side is the orange pattern paper I used to match the 3 fish photos. Anyway, I just cut out a bunch of the koi fish, including the ones without tails, because I wasn't sure what I was going to use, and I like having lots of options. That's one thing I love about Stampin' Up! Products for scrapbook layouts. You really have to get creative coming up with ideas for embellishments. In the photo, there are some large fern-like plants. So I turned to the Wild Ferns Stampin' Die set from Stampin' Up! And I stamped and cut out several leafy bits using Granny Apple Green in both the light and the dark, or the true side, of the cardstock. And I'll show you what I'm going to do to them to add a bit of interest. I'm going to grab a foam mat to work on. One of my favorite tools I've recently added to my craft room is the Take a Pick tool. It's a multi-tool that lets you switch out different implements for whatever task you need to tackle. The implements are super easy to change with just one small twist. For this job, I'm using the larger ball end. I'll demonstrate how I'm adding texture to these fern sprigs by running the ball along the middle of the stem. As I do this, you'll start to see the leaves curl up. I'll go along each side of the spine and gently work back and forth on each little leaf. The ferns felt like they were a bit flat before, but now they have a nice curl to them that really adds dimension to the layout. They'll flatten out a little bit in the album, but you'll be surprised at how much shape they'll maintain over time. For the smaller fern sprig, I'm repeating the same process. I'm applying quite a bit of pressure on these leaves, but as long as you have a foam mat underneath, you shouldn't have to worry too much about ripping the paper. Then I'll use my fingers to bend the leaves a little more to my liking. To step this up a notch, I'm adding a bit of ink to the leaves with a blending brush using Granny Apple Green ink. I'm just adding a light shadow to parts of the leaves. It is subtle and it might be a little hard to see on camera. Now I have two sizes of blending brushes, but for this application, I found the smaller one worked the best. You can skip this step if you prefer, but I really like the extra detail it adds. Next, I dug into my stash and found these dies from Stampin' Up called Botanical Builder. I cut out several leaves from Pretty Peacock using both the light and the dark sides of the cardstock, and I used the same curling technique as I did for the ferns, but since the leaves were more detailed, I used a lighter touch. To add a little shadow, I applied Pretty Peacock ink just to the stems and a little bit on the leaves. I know I cut out way more than I needed, but it's always better to have more than not enough, right? I also cut out some of the lily pads from the Lily Pad DSP, which will be a perfect addition to my embellishment clusters. Now I'm going to tuck the biggest lily pad under here, and I'm thinking it'll work as a landing spot for some of the koi fish. Let's see. Okay, so I like these two fish up here. By layering them, you can't tell that the pink one doesn't have a tail. I really like how this koi curls around the bottom left of the photo. I'm picturing two clusters, one at the top right of my focal photo, then one in the opposite corner on the left. The koi aren't really standing out against my photo right now. I have this 2 3/4 inch circle cut from white cardstock, and it's going to work perfectly to help showcase my koi fish. And while I like the lily pad at the bottom, I don't think it's going to serve the purpose I had planned. I'm moving the big lily pad so it sits between the lily pad paper, my goodness, say that 3 times, and the orange speckled paper, like that. Now you can really see my fish. I'm going to fuss around a bit, placing icons here and there until I'm happy with how they're placed. I did speed this part up a bit, but I wanted to leave it in so you could see my process of building embellishment clusters. These photos were taken one evening when we stopped to feed the koi fish on our way to dinner. We had a bit of time before our reservation, and exploring the resort was a favorite pastime for the boys. Of course, stopping for a pre-dinner cocktail was also a favorite pastime for the adult boys, so we made sure we carved out some time for that as well. When in Mexico, right? I wanted to add more balmy blue to the layout, and I thought I could layer a white circle under it. Then I'm going to switch out the circles and place the layered one at the top of the photo. I'll bring in an additional smaller circle at the bottom. I also cut out a few lily pads from blue cardstock using the charming duck pond dies to repeat that color in my clusters. Now for my title, I got really creative. Actually, I didn't. It just reads koi feeding. I created it using the print that cut feature in the Cricut design space. Now the orange color I used for the word koi is a little bit darker than the peach pie, but it's similar to the lines that are in that tone-on-tone striped orange DSP. There's this spot between my son and my husband that's perfect for the title, though I could also place it at the top of my photo, but I think I like it better down here. I cut out the offset layer a few times with white cardstock to give the title a little bit more dimension. The gray color is a bit brighter than I had originally wanted, but I am happy with it. Because I have so many layers of paper behind it, and due to where I'm placing it, I'll probably end up removing the layers from behind the word koi, so it lays at the same level as feeding. I hope that makes sense. Before I get too far with the embellishment clusters, I'm going to attach all my paper layers together. The easiest way I found to do this is to carefully lift one side of each layer at a time and place some adhesive underneath it. I'm attaching all the layers together, then I'll attach it as one big unit to the layout later on. Since I know I like the lily pad there, I'll attach that too while I'm at it. I'll finish the rest while the camera is paused, but for some added interest, I am going to dovetail the koi pattern paper as well as trim off 1/2 inch off the bottom of the wicker paper. I just felt like it was a little bit too long. So I'm not loving the 2 circles in opposite corners. It's just not working for me. The die cut lily pads I'm feeling are a little too small compared to everything else. I could make it work, but I think I can do better. I'm going to move the bigger circle back to where I originally had it, keeping the balmy blue partial circle on top. Now it looks like a small water pond, and I'll bring my koi back on top of it. I'm also going to tuck a few fern branches and sprigs behind the circle, just like I had it before. I also want to mention that I did ink the edges of the circle with gray granite ink. I still want to repeat the balmy blue color in the top cluster and add a place for my journaling. Tags will do the trick. Don't underestimate the power of a great tag shape. Actually, any shape really. I have 2 sizes here. As you can see, I haven't attached my paper layers to the layout yet. I'm just auditioning them here to see how they'll look, and I really like that combination. I have this white tag I'm planning on putting my journaling on, and then the smaller one is in balmy blue. Then I'll place 2 fish over it, and now they are swimming in water. Haha! I'll tuck a lily pad behind them and add a sentiment I had left over that says the little things. To finish off the cluster, I'll add a few sprigs coming out from behind the tag. That is looking much better. I'm going to quickly write out my journaling on the tag, and since I can't write straight, I'm going to use a ruler, draw lines in pencil, and erase them when I'm done. I'll spare you from watching that process. Now it's time to attach all the elements to the layout. I'll use Barely Art glue to attach the leaves, tape runner for the larger pieces, and foam dimensionals on a few icons to pop them up and add some dimension. To keep the ferns curled, I'll place foam behind the tips of some of them. I found some orange ribbon in my stash to finish off the white tags and tied a bow with white twine to secure it. For the top of the balmy blue tag, I used pretty peacock twine. I also added a few lily pads around the bottom cluster to help the koi fish stand out more. I cut them out, so why not use them? To finish off the layout, I'm using the clear Riverside irregular pearls around the fish to resemble water droplets. My clusters ended up spreading across the bottom and the top of the focal photo because of how I placed my title and the journaling spot, but I really love how it turned out. I'm using the Take Your Pick tool to attach the pearls to the layout. One side of the tool has a putty tip, which works great to pick up the dots. You just give them a little push to pick them up, then use your other finger to set them in place once you're happy with the positioning. My journaling reads, "We stopped to feed the koi fish on the way to supper." It's the little things like this that make the evenings fun. I'm calling this layout complete, and as I mentioned earlier, I did cut out the layers behind the word koi in my title to level them out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I've inspired you to get crafting. I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up and left me a comment below. I love reading all your messages, and I try to answer each one of you when I can. Your support really helps my channel grow. I'll post still shots of this layout on my Instagram page, so be sure to check that out. Here's a video I think you'll enjoy next. See you there.